Welcome to Power of Story podcast. We share personal testimonies that reveal life's ups and downs, from victories to lessons learned. Join us for stories that connect, inspire, and change how we see the world. Don't miss out on this journey of discovery and connection. Welcome to Power of Story. Today we are joined by Stephanie Rowe, a supply chain specialist with over 20 years of experience and a track record of saving businesses over 50 million. Stephanie's story is one of resilience and determination, overcoming childhood marked by addiction and poverty. Her memoir details her journey through therapy, reconnecting blocked memories, and transforming her life. Now she dedicates herself to empowering others, guiding them to achieve their goals with confidence. So join us as we explore her incredible journey and insights on overcoming adversity. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am super excited to hear about your story. It looks like, as I just said, you came from a struggle to something awesome, something that just blossomed and just took off. And it's so good to hear stories like that. And you have a book. So, by the end of our podcast, let's send, a link where people can get it and buy it. And let's, if someone's struggle has become a great testimony, then let's use that, right? That's so good.
Yes,
So,
I totally agree.
yeah, can you share a pivotal moment from your childhood that had a lasting impact on your journey?
Yeah, of course. And thank you so much for having me. And hello,
My
everybody
pleasure.
that's listening and watching. It's so nice to have you with us. So my name is Stephanie Rowe, also known as Mrs. Rowe Author, and I've self-published Fiercely Me, which is my memoir, and I'm very, very proud of it, to be honest. And in the book, I actually talk about this, but I talk about it in general with my close confidants as well. So a pivotal point in my life was when I was 15 and I was living with my nana at the time, and I was in just cleaning my teeth, and my nan came in and she's like, Stephanie. And I was like, yes. I was just like, oh God, what have I done? And she said, I need to tell you something. And I was like, okay, what do you need to tell me? And she's like, I need to tell you that I never ever want you to get to your deathbed and to have regrets. And I was like, okay. And she was so stern and she was looking at me in my eyes and she's like, no, I'm serious, Stephanie. I don't want you to get to your deathbed and regret anything. She's like, just live your life and experience as much as you can. And I was like, okay, Nan. And she's like, no, I mean it. And I'm like, okay. And it was such a strong kind of she handed over wisdom to me that I just live by that now. And it's because I think, she was she was English, so she came over to Australia on the as a 10-pound pom on the ships after World War II. And so she'd just watched her country just go into carnage and be bombed, and like it was quite severe for her, and obviously spent months at sea getting to Australia, and then had a massive life here, but it was definitely weaved with its own travesties. And so I always would listen to her stories, and I've spoken about it before, but I think the thing that really struck me was that my nan never had the opportunity to be educated. And she grew up where, she was owned by essentially her husband. Like back in those days, it was like you get married off and whatever the husband decides is it, and you have no independence. And so like my grandfather had passed away a year before I was born. And I think she'd seen in me the things that she'd wanted to experience. And so she'd always kind of impart her stories onto me. And it really kind of sunk in, the realization when I was around this age and when she had this conversation with me, that she never, ever had the opportunity to go and choose what she wanted to do. And I think as, women, but also men, we do take just that as for granted, honestly, the fact that we can go to school and we can decide what we want to do. Yeah, that we
Great.
have the opportunity to go and go, you know what, I'm going to go study if you have the means, or if you don't, you can make your own way, which is what I did. I never went to university because I never had the money, but I definitely went and learned a whole, like, within business. I learned on the job, and my nan never had that opportunity. And I could see that there was a huge sadness in her from that. And so I've really embodied the fact that, one, I'm a white woman in Australia, which means that I have a level of not authority, but I have more opportunities than, say, a coloured person, even though it is, women are still disadvantaged against men. But I still had the opportunity to use my voice. And so from all of her experiences, I chose to advocate for people that didn't have a voice. And especially, and I was contemplating this morning, actually, because I'm always very outspoken. And that is why I called the book Fiercely Me, because I am fiercely me, and I have opinions, and I'm not scared to advocate for myself and for others that might not have a voice. And that's the reality, is that we live in a world where some people don't have the opportunity to have free speech. They don't have the opportunity to have to talk about ideologies, or having a different perspective to the country and the governments that they're living under. They don't even have the opportunity as a woman to have autonomy over their decisions, over their bodies. So I take that really, really seriously. And so throughout my life, I've always been outspoken. And I think it really does drive from my nan, and seeing the sadness that she kind of shared with me when I was younger, of how she didn't have those opportunities, and she didn't have the ability to choose what she wanted to do, and she didn't have the ability to vocalize her wants and her desires and her dreams, and then actually put them into action. And I think that she really knew from an early age with me that I didn't have any fear. I don't see the world as others see the world, in the sense of like, oh, you're in power and I need to bow down to you, and I need to not say anything. I don't know, I shouldn't rock the boat. I don't even see any of that. I just walk in and I go, well, this is how I see it. And if you have a problem, I will come in and I will give you, different solutions to it. And it's up to you whether you want to or not. And people nearly fall over themselves, because they're like, you do realize that's the managing director. You do realize that's the CEO. You do realize that's the board member. You do realize that's the mayor. And I'm like, yeah, I do, actually. And they're just another human being who are in a leadership role. And so in my eyes, if you are in a leadership role, then you have the opportunity to actually affect change. And so how do you affect change? Through having the power of knowledge. Now, if you only have a very, very, very stricken, perception with your horse, guides on, then you're only going to, act from the knowledge of that very, very small snippet that you live in. Now, if you have different opinions, if you have different ideologies, if you have different ways that could possibly be done, not only socially, but within business and, within social circles, then it means that you're broadening the development of your mind and the concepts. And you're going, you know what, I might not agree with what you're saying, but it's giving me food for thought on how I can actually maybe make a different decision. And so really what she was trying to pass on to me when I was younger was to say, Stephanie, go and never, ever live through fear, and go and take risks and go and live. And when you get to that deathbed, you make sure that you feel completely happy with the life that you've lived and the experiences and memories that you've created along that life. And never, ever stop from actually being who you truly are, and for loving who that is. And so it's been a long journey, but I think that was honestly the deepest and vast handover of knowledge that really impacted me when I was younger.
That's so good. That's amazing. It's amazing because not only did your grandma pass on something to you, but you were able to one connect with her and be like, okay, I get it, I understand, and then live it. Like, hey,
Yeah,
grandma had some really great advice, and you probably, like you said, you you lived a better life because you probably saw how she did. right?
Yeah.
There was probably
Yeah,
that,
100%.
you know how there's a sparkle in your eye now. I can see that. Sometimes I feel like we look at the older generation and that spark just isn't there because I think you're so right? It's like they didn't do something, they didn't say something, they didn't, they didn't dream, or they had the dreams. In Portuguese we have a saying that the cemetery is full of dreams because that's where you know so many dreams and nobody lived them because they're afraid. It's like
Yeah.
have the I don't know, I don't even know what the word is, this the strive or the courage
Yeah.
to stand up and do it. But she did have the courage to be vulnerable in front of you and be like, listen, I didn't, but you can. So you know what, good for her, good for her. Is your grandma still alive?
No, she passed away about 6, 7 years ago now, and I think of her all the time, to be honest, because we had such a beautiful relationship, and I was probably the closest out of all of the grandchildren, and I
Right.
just think it was just because I just had this liveliness in me, and it was never ever stifled. Like I've had a lot of hardships that I've had to kind of conquer and live through. But it never took away my
Mhm.
child, my inner child, my liveliness, my joy, me. And Nan just loved it. And so we just had these really special moments all the way through my upbringing.
Good.
And,
Yeah,
I love her so much and I miss her. But she was also really old and she had such a big life. And so I'm kind of happy that she's passed. But I'm also like, oh man, if imagine if Nan was like 60 or 70 again, imagine like what she would be thinking right now. Like she would
absolutely.
be so incredibly tickled pink. Like she'd just be like, I can't believe you wrote a book. And yeah, she'd
Right.
just be
Uh,
so proud of me.
no, that's so good. Now I mean, I read your bio and it talks about your parents, and I have a
Yes.
question. How did growing up with parents who struggled with addiction and poverty, how did that shape with your outlook in life and your success today?
Yeah. So it's a great question, honestly, because like I have, like I right now, and for a very long time, honestly, since I was younger, obviously I lived through quite severe poverty, and there was a lot of domestic violence and sexual assault and stuff like that, sexual abuse. And so for me, like you kind of have one of two options. Well, you've got a few more, but like generally, kind of you fall on each side. And one is to kind of allow the experiences to completely take over, which it has happened, um, but then to allow yourself to grieve and to process and to move through. Or the other one is to utilize your experience in how you want to see the world, right? And so I've taken that road. I've gone, I personally never want to live in poverty ever again in my life. And it's been such a driving force because I think to myself, if everybody had equality, what would come out of it? Would you have people like me that are so driven, have so much courage and are so fearless and have such invigoration in life, but also initiative and see the world in such different ways. And I think that you would have that, but you would have the space to kind of develop, and you would have it, kind of like in the Greeks when they had their philosophical circles, where and in France as well. Like France had the same kind of things. They would have philosophical bars and cafes where people would turn up and have the space to discuss society and different ideologies, and they would mull over it. Sometimes for 10 hours these discussions would just continue. And so what comes out of that is a more developed and a more engaging society, because people have the space to actually engage in conversation and in-depth ideological and philosophical conversations, where I love that, but life gets in the way sometimes. So for me, I think there has been a really deep understanding of, I want to eradicate all poverty and all inequality in the world. Now, why do I want that? Because I've experienced it, and it's so soul crushingly hard to live like that. And I think that I have the opportunity to actually voice a different perspective and to drive that going forward. Now, when I walk into boardrooms, when I walk into offices and I manage teams of people, you would never tell that I have come from the background that I have, right? But I also see that role as a leader as a really huge opportunity to bring empathy and consciousness to those establishments. Because not everybody, well, I think a large portion, honestly, of people that are sitting in those rooms have absolutely no idea what it is like to not be able to pay for your phone bill, to not be able to pay for your rent, to not be able to pay for your electricity or your food, to not have a car because you can't fuel it. Like they don't understand the concepts of what severe poverty is and how you actually have to survive and hustle and dig deep, because and I can tell you right now, there is so many men and women internationally on that hustle of just surviving. And
Yeah.
it's just like, imagine if we went to Africa or we went to India or we went to Vietnam and we removed that immense pressure of just surviving, and you allowed them to have an education and to have access to healthcare and to food and to housing and to clothing. Imagine the beautiful minds that would come out of that. So for me, I went down that road and I was like, I have a mind that is intellectually able to not only come from this world of hardship and just be like, and I was literally, came out of a fire from that life. And I just was like, I have the opportunity to now change the world in how I see is the best way for me to influence. And so I use that all the time because it's so important that you have different voices in different settings.
Yeah.
And so that's how I have used it. And now, like, my struggle with not with like my father and my mother having addiction dependencies is hard because as a child, I didn't have love. Like, they don't even know how to love. They don't know how to care. They don't know how to look after themselves, let alone having children, and I'm the eldest of 5. So that meant that I had to essentially like take on a role of a mother very young, as a very young person, because they weren't able and capable of actually parenting. And so that changes a person. So as an adult, you get influenced by, the complete deprivation of love, complete deprivation of care, of being put into, and but not by choice, of squalor, of being put into, situations where there's unsavory human beings, like you're forced into all of these places, like, going to parties where children shouldn't be and parents just off the rails, like there's so many things that happen to a child when you come from a place where your parents have dependency issues, and it's hard, and it's so hard as a child to watch someone that you love as a parent, because you obviously love unconditionally, they're killing themselves,
Mm.
and you go, why can't you see the love for yourself? Why can't you see who you are and that you deserve to have a better life? Why can't you see that, using drugs and using alcohol and using pills is actually detrimental to you, and detrimental to your life? And so there's a mourning, because it's just like you have to watch the carnage unfold, let alone the personal things that I had to do. You have to
Yeah.
watch someone that you love slowly die and choose something over a child, day in and day out. And now that is really hard. And I've had to work
Mhm.
really, really hard as an adult through, professionals to understand what true self-love is, and to be able to give myself that, because I knew just to this day I was never going to get that from them. So I had to, be self-sufficient and understand, and I still have my issues,
Yeah.
but I've definitely managed them a lot better. But, it's really does, I think the underlying thing was realizing that I had to love myself deeply and unconditionally, all
Yeah.
facets, not only the dark parts, not only the parts that I'm ashamed of and I don't want to talk about or acknowledge, or, but I had to literally walk in and be like, I love you entirely.
Yeah.
I love every single part of you, Stephanie, and I'm always going to be here. And so when you have that really deep self-love and self-esteem for yourself, your world changes, and then you are able to then, go forward in a more healthier way, and then touch people in really beautiful ways. And so I think that, and not everybody does that comes from my background as well. Yeah,
No.
like, and
No, it
Yeah,
don't.
and
Actually, I
they
was going to ask
don't.
that. I was going to ask you that. It's funny because I am the oldest out of five children too, and my dad was an alcoholic, so I kind of grew up a little bit like you. And I was just going to ask, you came out of it, and I know you speak about some experiences, some blocked memories, obviously some trauma, but out of the five siblings, did everybody had the same outcome as you? And I'm not putting shame on anybody else, but was everybody else able to get out of it and be like,
Yeah.
no, you know what? That happened to me when I was younger, but I'm going to be a better version of myself. I'm going to love myself just, just like you described it right now.
Yeah. I think that I don't think that everybody loves themselves like I love myself. And I'm honestly patiently waiting to see them have that moment of, like I've been watching all of the children grow up into adults now, and I'm hoping that they see their self-value and they see their self-worth. But I think they have all gotten, except the younger two who are still at my mum's place, and I don't think that they're going to ever get out of there, to be honest. They're very, very
Not anymore.
codependent. Pardon?
Not the way the world is going, so expensive.
I
Everything.
Oh, 100%, 100%. But the two boys, so there's two boys below me, and so they have definitely got out, and so one's a painter and he's well established, and the other one has definitely got out, and I think the first three were just like, no, we're not going down the same path as our parents. But I have seen, addiction laced in parts of their lives. And to be fair, I've used substance. I've drank alcohol at times to mask and to deal with my pain. But now, as I've kind of done a lot of therapy, I choose not to, because I like my mind and I like to be clear and I like to engage in the world and I like to have that beautiful clarity of connecting with not only myself but the world around me and the people in it. And when you use substance, I have found that it kind of, yeah, it's, you don't get that full engagement within yourself, within the world. But yeah, and so it's been a journey for them, and I've had to watch them kind of go through it and to go, like I this isn't the right path, and I need to kind of do work and shift. And so although they're nowhere near as advanced on their seeking professional help and doing the work, I have definitely seen certain shifts in them. But it's been really hard because it's also down to personality as well. And I think, like, for me, I have a very strong, very, I'm headstrong. I know what I want. I'll say it. I'll voice it. I'll take on other people's opinions. I'll mull over them, but like the rest of the kids, they don't have that real
Yeah,
strength in that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so when you have that personality, when you don't have that kind of inner strength, it changes your life. And so, like, yeah, so it's also kind of complex within the personality dynamics as well. But yeah, it's hard just to watch that, because you have, like, I love them so unconditionally, but then I've also watched similar cycles play out with the
Yeah.
boys as well, where they've taken on, my mum's partner and my father's, anger and domestic violence, and I've had to kind of step back and just go, oh my God, you are just playing out what you've seen as a child, and you're continuing this domestic violence cycle. And then realizing I would be, like, the family members when I was a child standing around watching this kind of happen. And then I had this pivotal moment where I was just like, am I going to do what they did and just allow it to happen and not say anything, not advocate for the children, not try and intervene in any way? And I thought to myself, no, I have the opportunity to say, this is an okay behavior. You should not be domestically violent towards your partner and children. And this is something that we need to address within the family dynamic. And how we do that is really important, because we are going to then shift the cycle and the handover to the next generation. And it can only be when we take responsibility for our own actions that we
Yeah.
shift
Yeah.
the cycle, right? And so when I advocated for a discussion to be had in the family about domestic violence and how we should no longer have it, I was shunned, exiled, and just completely verified. Like, they went on the offensive, because what I was doing was I was coming up against a deep ideological viewpoint of them, even though they weren't conscious of it. They were like, you are coming in and saying that our life that we've lived and our, we've been quite is not okay. And it's like, no, because we shouldn't be living in severe domestic violence, guys. And we have an opportunity to, own it and go, look, this isn't okay. And we should, we have the opportunity to change. That is why we're human beings. That's why we are at the top of the food chain, because we have this beautiful mind, which gives us the ability to change.
Absolutely.
We can change at any time that we choose to. We can actually physically change our mind and our pathways in our brains. And so I go, Haley, why don't we have a discussion? Why don't we talk about it? No, there was too much shame. They doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on it. And what they wanted to do was to go, if we remove her, then we don't have to do anything. And that's what I mean by the decision, like earlier on in the conversation.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I'm saying, and you said a pivotal word, like they're ashamed, and probably because they see you, they feel that even more, right? Like, oh, she's here, and she overcame it. Why can't we, right? And it's so frustrating to see loved ones fall into a trap that they probably complained about when they were younger, and they probably were like, "What are you doing? Get out of there!" And now they're in it, and as loved ones around them, you just want to show them, like, "Come on, you can get out of this hole, right? You can get out of here. Like, let's go." But it's so sad that the shame and guilt play such a hard part in the story, right? That you can be free. You can never be or happy or happy. And it's sad that it goes generation to generation.
I totally agree with you, because it's like shame and guilt and all of those really uncomfortable feelings. They control people. It controls them. They live in this fear, right? And it's like, but when you actually vocalize it and you acknowledge it, and then you bring in action to change, that shame dissipates. It's no longer going to control you. That guilt, you can feel guilty, but it's, if you're going to stay in the guilt and wallow in the guilt and the shame,
you're going to drown.
You're going to drown, and you're going to bring everybody around you down. If you choose to go to own it and go, yeah, look, that was pretty bad behavior, and like, I don't actually like that person, and I'm quite ashamed of who I was in that moment, but I'm going to do this. I'm going to work towards this, this, and this, and I'm going to implement boundaries, and I'm going to do la, 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 and I'm going to take responsibility, and I'm going to put it into action. You then release all of the control of guilt, all of the control of shame, right? And you then open up a beautiful opportunity to create a new life, not only within your micro dynamics of your family, but in your extended family as well, right? And then there's true possibility. Like, then you are truly like adding so much beauty to the world, right? But they chose that the guilt and the shame was where they wanted to sit, and where they wanted to wallow, and where they didn't want to leave, because that's what they knew, that's what they feel, and they're comfortable in it, right? And that's okay, because like, for me, I understood that dynamic, right? So I like, it's disappointing. Am I angry about it? No. I don't waste any energy on it anymore, because it's like, they have the choice. They're adults. They have, every single one of them are adults. They all have that choice. They have the right to decide that. But I was giving them a different opportunity, and I will never, ever, ever leave this world regretting my decision, because like, I always judge a person on their character of how they deal with situations. And so I judge myself on how I deal with situations. Now, I chose a different path to both sides of the family. When I was a child, they decided to allow the behavior and not bring it up. I chose to advocate for change, and I chose as an adult to try and shift the dynamic of the family. Now, yes, every decision that we have has consequences, but I'm quite happy with my
Mm.
consequences because I know that I have this beautiful life filled with beautiful people who are progressive, who don't want to have domestic violence, that don't want substance, they don't want to live in squalor, they don't want to have junkies surrounding their life, and like they want to develop. And I'm always going to be here. I've always got an open door policy. If someone wants to come to my door and they go, I'm in need, I will always open my door and allow them to come in and have a discussion. Now, am I going to allow behavior to continue? No, there is conditions that we will have, that you are allowed and welcomed into my home, but we aren't going to tolerate domestic or abuse, or, like there are boundaries set in place. But I will always have an open door policy for my entire family. And like, I've had family members go, do you hate your, uncle or your father or your auntie? And I'm like, no, I don't hate anybody. Like, I just have my opinions. And I think my opinions are really valid, and I'm okay with advocating for them. If and that's a very different perception of things, right? So from the outside, people think I hate them, and I don't. It's just that I have a difference of opinion to them, which they want me
And
to adapt to theirs, and I'm not going to.
I think the good thing is that you probably don't care what they think because you're so
No.
comfortable with who you are right now, right?
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah. Yeah. And
obviously,
it's funny.
oh,
Oh,
sorry,
sorry.
sorry, no,
No, you
go on,
go.
go on. I was gonna
Oh
say,
no, because I had to do a
let's
bit of
talk
a
about the book.
rework.
Yes, I was
Yeah.
just gonna mention that.
Yeah, I had to do a bit of a rework. So I just finished that up this morning. And what I did find out when I released Fiercely Me was that my father's side of the family went on the defensive, like, I mean, defensive, and was like consciously and proactively trying to tarnish the book, make sure that no one supported it. Like they went for the jugular, right? And I just thought, and you know what my response was? I like, obviously it was sad because I was like, man, that's, you guys are really, like, you really dislike me if that's what you, when you're exerting that much conscious effort to sabotage a book, right? Which, by the way, they haven't read it, and they won't read it. Like, they don't even know what's in the book.
Didn't even know the context of the book.
They
Wow.
have no idea, right? And I thought, and my husband was like, oh, that's really sad. I said, yeah, it is sad. But I said, you know what the most interesting thing is that they're sitting there filled with anger, filled with aggression, filled with agitation, filled with frustration. Like all of them have all of this really big negative emotion when my name is mentioned or brought up. And I said, I have none of that. I don't waste any energy. They are wasting their energy on me. Like, I'm not doing that in return, like, yeah, it's sad. Like, I feel sorry for them, if anything, because I'm like, wow, you guys really don't understand what the message of the book is. And the message of the book is, yeah, shitty things can happen to you, but you can also change it. And you can also, come out of it and have self-reflection and have self-love and empowerment. And, you can advocate for yourself in so many areas of your life and uplift. Like, the ending of, like, three-quarters of my book is literally uplifting. It's about empowerment and, taking back, your own power, and how you can then go and live a flourishing life. And if they'd actually read the bloody thing, then they'd realize that it has nothing to do with them,
Um,
or like, but I just, yeah, so for me, I just go, well, you're wasting your energy on me, I'm not wasting it on you, doll. So, but that's their decision.
was there because obviously you're healed.
Yeah.
Where was there a process during the book that you came across something that you were like, oh, I thought this was gone,
Yeah.
had to deal with it. I'm just saying, was your healing, did healing happen as you wrote the book? I'm assuming you wrote the book or had somebody writing it for you, whatever it was. But was there,
No, no. I wrote the book myself. I did it
good for
myself.
you.
It
That's
was,
awesome.
yeah, it was all me.
That's amazing.
Um, yeah, it really is. It really is. I'm so proud of it. But yeah. So healing's an interesting one, and I actually did a chapter on healing, because there is a concept out in this world where you just kind of summed it up. Oh, have you healed? Did anything come back up? Is it, and for me, healing is, I have a very different concept of healing. Healing is about not allowing it to affect you as deeply as it once did. right? I don't think when you go through severe traumatic experiences in life that you're ever going to like not have an emotional response or not have a trigger later on in life, or it's not going to not come up. And there is a concept when you go start doing your healing journey that it's all eradicated and it's gone, and it's like, which
Here.
I wish that was the case. Like, I would, hand on heart, I'm like, oh, if we could just like heal it once and it be gone, I'd be like, oh yeah, like
Yes.
we'd be living in a different world. But unfortunately, that's not how healing works. It's just about understanding that it doesn't have so much control on you. So when I first had like, because there is a chapter on my blocked memories, and I don't like, I've read it about 6 times and I don't think that I can ever read it again, because like I've spent a lot of my life having really bad nightmares, waking up, having really quite severe triggers. And just so people know, because there's a misconception of what a trigger is. A trigger is when you go through something traumatic, and it could be anything, and you don't deal with it completely, or there's still residue of that traumatic experience. You can be living your life and then something can happen and you'll have an emotional and physical response to it, right? And sometimes it's not pleasant for people around you to experience that, because it's not pleasant for the person that's triggered to experience it. And so what I work towards is that having those triggers become less and less and less, and not as overwhelming and not as debilitating, because like I've had a lot of triggers in my life which have been debilitating. So the chapter around the sexual abuse, I can't, although it was therapeutic to write, I don't think that I can go and read it again, because I've already read it so many times. I've lived it. It's been my experience. But it was one of the hardest because it was so confronting. Because when I was writing it, I was just coming out of it. And I realized that I had an issue with me being associated with being a victim. And I couldn't actually say that I was a victim of sexual abuse. And I had to really sit with that, because there was shame associated with that. Like, although I was experiencing all of these things, like I was like, when the block memories came up, I was having all of the sexual assault, reactions of like being really self-conscious, of thinking it was me that had caused it, all of those things that happened. But then once I kind of got through and I'd processed all of that with my psychologist, and I was kind of left with the aftermath, what I did realize was that it's never going to go away, but it's not going to control me so much. And the triggers aren't going to come up as much. But I don't need to ever read it again. And although it was therapeutic, and I'm glad that my story's out there, because the other thing that happened within this whole thing was that everybody wanted to take my voice away. They wanted to take my narrative away, and they wanted to tell the world what which made them feel better about their existence and what they chose to do in the situations, instead of what my experience was and how I felt through that. And so me writing the book meant that it eradicated them. I was able to go, no, this is my experience. This is actually what happened to me. And you can't take that away. You cannot take that away from me, because you weren't there. You weren't there. You didn't experience it. I was the
Story. Yeah.
Yeah, it's my story. So it was therapeutic in many ways. But there's also parts which are sad, and I had to, kind of grapple with a whole heap of things that came up, like being a victim, and then understanding what happens once you accept that you are a victim of sexual abuse, and where does your life go after that, and how do you deal with it? What's my identity? Who am I? And then I published a poetry book a couple of weeks ago called The World in Our Words. And there is a poem in there, and it's literally like about that subject. And I wrote it, and it's called The World That Spins Around You. And I wrote it because I was like, I felt like there was nothing left of me. that they had taken everything from me. Like they'd taken my childhood, they'd taken so many years of my life away because I didn't know what had happened to me, but I was having all of these really weird responses to things, and there was no like answer to it. So it was very weird that all of these things were happening, but I didn't know why. And so, when the memories came up, and I, like in my early 30s, I was just like, well, this explains a lot of what has happened and why I've responded to things in the way that I have. But I was also like, I just felt like I was just a shattered, broken human being. And so I had to kind of go through all of that as well. And I had to kind of, have really hard conversations and be like, it's okay to feel like this. And so, that poem is around me being a phoenix and rising from the ashes, because that's how I felt I was. I felt like had been burnt and was just ash on the floor, to be blown away with the wind. That's how I was feeling as a person. But then I also moved through that, and I realized that I had the power to then rise as a phoenix. And it didn't, yes, all of these experiences of life make us who we are, but it's such a powerful thing if you choose to use it in a certain way. And so how I use mine is to use my voice and to be able to bring people together and to be able to have a different perspective on the world. And so that's why that poem is so powerful. And I love that poem. I love it. Like, because at the end of it, I think the last sentence is like, you can never, like, I decide who I am now, and you never get to take anything from me, because I've gone through this whole journey. You've shattered me, you've destroyed me, I've come up as a phoenix, but I've built myself as a new person. Because like going through all of this, you can't not change, right? You cannot change. Like it just is such an influential period that, but afterwards you get to choose, who am I going to be? What do I want? How do I want my life to live? What do I want to create? What world do I want to see? And that's where that poem really kind of finished. And that's how the end of the book finishes as well, because I was just like, and I
Just
reread the end of my book.
opportunities, just open opportunities.
Oh,
Yeah,
100%.
I can do anything I want.
100%. Exactly. And I end the book in the most powerful way. And I reread the end of my book recently, and I was like, oh my God, this is really good. I was like, this is amazing.
Awesome. That's so good. So how do you plan, as we wrap up, how do you plan to do to continue to inspire and empowering other people who have struggled the same way you've struggled, but again, I'm here. This is the new me. I'm ready. I'm ready for opportunities. I'm ready to face the world. What do you have to say?
Yeah. So I think every human being has the right to do and to go after any passion that they decide. I want to say that. And we live in a world where people like to take that right away, and they like to try and muddy the waters and use segregation and all of these things, right? But when you stand back and you look at the world, you realize that that is someone else's perception that they are putting onto you. And when you wipe that away and you stand there every morning and you look at yourself in the mirror, you have the ability to actually change so much in your life. If you want it, you can actually go for it, and you can change it. And even if you have the odds stacked against you, which I've had the odds stacked against me my entire life, you if you want something, you can actually get it. There is nothing off the table. And you can be, and this is where I'm going, because like I'm now being booked as a speaker. I'm doing workshops. I've got all of these amazing opportunities coming my way, which is I'm so insanely grateful for and so happy about. But I
And
also see,
lives will change, and people will listen
yes,
to you, and lives will change, and that's fantastic. What else? I mean, that's that's amazing.
it,
That's
it is
amazing
amazing.
to be that little seed that's changed somebody's life, right? That's given hope
Exactly.
to somebody. That's
Exactly.
so
And
good.
so, and that's honestly where I see myself is
Yeah.
walking into a leadership role, but a leadership role where the people need a leader that is not going to be swayed, is not corrupt, but has the interest of the people at heart. And so we need leaders in this world that are uncorruptible, that have that can make hard decisions, that understand how to lead in a conscious way, but to lead with empathy and care, yeah, and equality. And it's not just about what my interests are. It's not subjective to what my needs are, but it's subjective to the needs of well, objective to the needs of everyone. And so really this is my this year is really about me going out, doing the leadership, doing the workshops, you know, going down these paths of new opportunity, but then building and going, you know what, I'm a beacon, and
Oh,
understanding the true power of
mm,
being a leader beacon, and going, okay guys, it's time. Because like we all know what you know, there is a huge crisis happening right now across the world. You know, people can't find homes, people can't buy food, people aren't surviving. Now, there has to be change, but you have to have the correct leadership, you know. And so for me, that's where I see myself going, is in that direction, because I know that I have the stamina, I have the confidence, and I have the
you have the
knowledge and
energy.
intellect.
You have
And
the
I have
energy.
the
You
energy.
have the
So,
energy, girl. You do.
yeah.
Do. And you know
So,
what? Writing a book, you should be proud. That's amazing. That is
thank you.
like you know what? There's been many times like I wish I could write a book. But then you start, you're like, nah. It takes it takes a gift to write a book. So you know what? Bravo to you. Bravo to you, because it's not just they're not just words. They have meaning. They will bring change into someone's life. They've
They
obviously
will.
brought change into your life. And you know what? That's empowering those around you. And you know what? Hopefully it goes beyond, where you're living. It goes all over the world, and
Oh,
women,
and
men,
it
children,
already, this
everything.
book already has gone all over the world, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I think when I started writing Fiercely Me, I thought that it was my story, and I'll finish on this. I thought it was my story, and it was all about the processing and things like that, and and owning my narrative. But once I released Fiercely Me and it went out into the world, what happened was people read it, and then they would review it and they would go, "Oh my god, I feel like she's holding a mirror up to my face.
Yeah.
I feel like she's just gone into my soul. I have an auntie like that, or I have an uncle like that, or a grandma or a grandpa." And what I realized, that it was no longer my story, it was everybody's story. And that was the most powerful thing, that it's no longer mine, it's our story.
Our
And
story.
this book, and it is a hard thing to do, to write a book, don't get me wrong, it is difficult to do, it is not an easy process. But again, if you want it bad enough, you will do it, and you will
Yeah.
continue to create it into a success. So Fiercely Me is not just my story anymore, it is our story, and it is
Yeah.
resonating with people all over the world in the most beautiful way that I could not imagine. And everyone's like, "Oh my god, the writing's really good." I'm like, "Yeah, it is, because I wrote it."
So good. It's so good. Well, you know what? I definitely want to share some links, and maybe you can email me your poem and then I can share it, because that's powerful. I think, right,
Yeah,
from the ashes and becoming a phoenix, that's so good. That's so good. And you know what? And in a day where people are just, I think people have no hope. People have lost something. People have lost that shine. Like we were talking about, you have that shine that, if they can read your book, or just be inspired and live it and
yes,
see it. You know what? I've been there. I've been in that dark spot. I've been in that dark place. But look at me now. Look at us. We
yeah.
can get there, right? That is so good. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I had a blast talking to you. And please, I want to share it. I'm hoping that all the listeners will buy your book, because, like you said, it's not just your story. There's a little bit of us in each chapter, or even just a sentence that you'll be like,
Yeah,
I have felt like that, or that's exactly how I feel. And maybe we haven't found the voice to say it. And once we read it, we'll be like, that's exactly what I want to say. So
100%.
that's so good.
But yeah, so you can get my book on my website, which is mrsrowe.org. So mrsrowe.org. Or you can come and follow me on socials, which is Mrs. Rowe Author. And like, please come and buy it. Come and get inspired. Come and read a story that is hard and so empowering. It's such a beautiful story. And I think that everybody has the ability to do whatever their little heart desires. And if I can touch someone to have inspiration to run after their dream, that will make my life